The megacity of Zeiton, the central hub of the galaxy, was usually filled with bright lights, endless chatter, and the vibrant energy of countless alien species. But today, a dark shadow hung over it, making everyone feel uneasy. The source of the fear was unknown, but it was spreading fast. No one understood what it was, but they all felt it deep in their bones, a terror so powerful it made even the bravest shiver. Zeiton was a place where species from all over the galaxy came to trade, share knowledge, and build alliances. But now, these very species were hiding in their homes, their eyes wide with fear. The Galactic Council, the ruling body of Zeiton, was in chaos. They could feel the presence of something dark, something terrifying approaching from the depths of space. The alien leaders called it the Abyss. No one knew what the Abyss was, only that it was coming closer each day. The mere thought of it made the strongest warriors shake with fear. The Zolthorians, a race known for their fierce strength, had stopped their patrols, their mighty warriors now cowering in their bunkers. The Veltari, master diplomats with nerves of steel, could not stop trembling as they tried to speak. Even the Elnari, a psychic race with the power to read minds, had their mental shields shattered by the waves of terror emanating from the Abyss. As the fear spread, the council called an emergency meeting. Alien leaders filled the great hall, their faces pale, their voices trembling. They argued about what to do, but none of their plans seemed useful. How could they fight something that they could not see, that they could not understand? Then, in the middle of the heated debate, an unfamiliar sound echoed through the hall. A loud, confident voice. The council members turned to see a human delegation enter the room. The humans were newcomers to the galaxy, a species most aliens thought of as weak, inexperienced, and reckless. Yet here they stood with calm expressions and steady hands, seemingly unaffected by the fear that gripped everyone else. Captain Marcus Reed, the leader of the human delegation, stepped forward. He was tall, with a strong jaw and eyes that showed determination. He spoke clearly. "We have heard about the Abyss, and we are here to help." The room fell silent. Some council members laughed nervously, while others frowned in disbelief. How could these fragile creatures offer any help? But Captain Reed continued, "We humans are no strangers to fear. Our history is filled with battles, disasters, and threats that have pushed us to the edge. But we do not give up, we do not run away." An old Zolthorian warrior sneered, "You do not know what you are talking about, human. The Abyss is beyond anything you can imagine." Captain Reed smiled slightly. "Maybe. But we have faced things before that seemed impossible. We have survived things that should have destroyed us. So we are not afraid." The aliens in the room stared at the humans, confused and surprised. How could they stand so calmly when everyone else was shaking? The Abyss was still approaching, its fear growing stronger each day, yet these humans did not even flinch. "Let us face it," Reed suggested. "If the Abyss is coming, we should meet it head-on, not hide in the shadows." The council members exchanged worried glances. Some of them thought the humans were crazy, others thought they were foolish. But deep down, a few began to feel a tiny spark of hope, a flicker that maybe, just maybe, these strange creatures from Earth might have something the rest of them did not. A courage that could stand up to the unknown. As the humans prepared to face the Abyss, a new feeling began to spread through Zeiton, a feeling that had not been felt in a long time, a feeling of possibility, of resistance. The Abyss was near, but perhaps for the first time someone would stand against it, not with fear, but with defiance. And so while everyone else cowered, the humans stood tall. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The Galactic Council's chamber was buzzing with tension. The alien leaders were still shocked by the humans' boldness. Most of them couldn't understand how these newcomers could stand so fearlessly in the face of the Abyss. Yet, here they were, preparing to confront it directly. Captain Marcus Reed, standing tall, gazed around the chamber. His crew, a mix of humans, each with different backgrounds and skills, stood behind him. They shared his calm determination. Among them was Lieutenant Sarah Kwan, a brilliant strategist, and Dr. Ethan Patel, a scientist with a deep curiosity about the unknown. Each human seemed ready to face whatever lay ahead. A member of the council, a Veltari diplomat named Zyra, finally spoke up. "You are brave, humans," she said, her voice shaking. But bravery will not help you. The abyss is something we have never seen before. It feeds on fear. Every ship that has approached it has either turned back in terror or been lost forever. Captain Reed nodded. We understand the risk, he replied. But fear is something we humans have faced many times. We want to understand what the abyss truly is. We think it may be more than just a force of terror. The room fell silent as the council members exchanged worried glances. Could these humans truly face the abyss? Could they discover what it was? Despite their doubts, there was a flicker of hope in the room. Finally, the council agreed to let the humans proceed. They had nothing to lose, after all. If the humans failed, they would be no worse off than they were now. If they succeeded, maybe there was a chance. Captain Reed and his crew boarded their ship, the Intrepid. As they prepared to leave, Sarah Kwan turned to Reed. Are we really going to do this, Captain? She asked, her voice steady but her eyes filled with curiosity. Reed smiled. We didn't come all this way to turn back now, Lieutenant. We're going to find out what the abyss really is, and we're going to show the galaxy that fear doesn't have to win. The ship's engines roared to life, and they launched into the void, heading straight toward the heart of the darkness, where the abyss waited. As they approached, the shadows seemed to grow deeper, the stars themselves dimming as if the light was being swallowed. Inside the ship, Dr. Ethan Patel monitored the sensors. We're entering the affected zone, he reported. No visual contact yet, but the readings are strange. It's like the energy around us is shifting. Suddenly, a voice echoed in their minds, not through the ship's speakers, but directly in their heads. It was deep, ancient, filled with a cold, bone-chilling fear. Why do you come? The voice asked. Do you not fear me? Sarah Kwan gripped her seat. Is that the abyss? Captain Reed took a deep breath. We come to understand you, he said, speaking aloud, not sure if the entity could hear him through thoughts alone. We do not fear you because fear is a choice and we choose not to surrender to it. The voice in their minds seemed to tremble slightly, as if surprised by their answer. You speak with courage, it replied. But courage is nothing before me. Reed's eyes narrowed. Then show yourself. Let us see you, not just feel you. There was a long pause, then the darkness outside the ship began to swirl and shift. A form appeared, like a massive shadow stretching across the stars. It was not solid, but rather a collection of dark tendrils moving like smoke. The crew could feel the fear it emanated, a chill that crept into their bones. But they did not flinch. They stared at the entity with wide, steady eyes. What are you? Dr. Patel whispered, his scientific curiosity overtaking his fear. Are you alive? Are you a being or just a force? The entity hesitated again, almost as if it was thinking. I am what remains, it said finally. I am fear, given form. Captain Reed took a step forward. If you are fear, then you can also be something else. Fear is only a feeling. It does not define you. The shadow seemed to ripple, almost like it was confused. Something else? It repeated, as if the idea was completely new to it. Yes, Reed continued. We can help you find out what that is. But first, you must stop spreading fear. The abyss did not reply immediately. It seemed to draw back, its form flickering in the darkness. The crew waited, their hearts beating fast but their faces calm. For the first time, the abyss did not seem as threatening, and they sensed that maybe, just maybe, they had planted a seed of doubt in its mind. The silence inside the Intrepid was almost unbearable. The crew held their breath, waiting for the abyss to respond. The dark shape outside the ship hovered like a cloud of shadows, uncertain, as if struggling with the idea Captain Reed had planted in its mind. Suddenly, the deep, cold voice returned, echoing in their thoughts. You speak of something else, something beyond fear. But how can you know such a thing? The voice sounded almost curious, a slight tremble replacing the overwhelming dread it usually carried. Captain Reed glanced at his crew, then back into the darkness outside. We know because we've lived through fear, he answered. We've faced it again and again, and we've learned not to let it control us. The abyss seemed to draw closer, its form shifting like smoke. Show me, it demanded. Show me how you can live without fear. Reed nodded. He knew what needed to be done. Dr. Patel, he called out, prepare to send a transmission. We're going to show it who we are. Dr. Ethan Patel quickly began to pull up data on his screen. He hesitated for a moment, then activated a signal. A holographic display filled the ship's cabin and images began to play, scenes from Earth's history. The crew watched as the images flickered by. The early days of humanity appeared first, the struggle for survival in a world filled with predators and natural disasters. They saw primitive humans building fires, hunting for food, and learning to protect themselves from the dangers around them. The abyss seemed to watch, its form pulsing slightly, as if trying to understand what it was seeing. "You lived in fear, then?" it whispered, its voice slightly softer. "Yes," Reed replied, "but we did not stop. We learned. We adapted. We grew stronger." The images changed. Now they showed the great wars of human history. Battles fought over land, freedom, and survival. Soldiers stood firm in the face of death, and entire civilizations rose and fell. The abyss seemed to tremble, sensing the immense fear that had driven these conflicts. "But you fought each other," it said, its voice louder. "You were filled with fear." Reed nodded again. "Yes, we were. But even then, we did not surrender to it. We kept going even when it seemed impossible. We fought for something greater than ourselves." The images shifted again, this time showing moments of human achievement, the discovery of electricity, the invention of the wheel, space exploration, and the moon landing. The crew could see the determination in the faces of the scientists and explorers, the bravery in their eyes as they ventured into the unknown. The abyss seemed to pull back slightly, confused. "You reached for the stars, even though you were afraid?" "Yes," Sarah Kwan spoke up. "We were afraid, but we were also curious. We wanted to know what lay beyond our fears. We wanted to explore, to learn, to understand the universe." The dark shape outside seemed to ripple, its tendrils shifting and twisting. "I do not understand," it confessed. "How can you be afraid and still move forward?" Captain Reed smiled. "Because fear is just a feeling," he explained. "It can warn us of danger, but it does not have to control us. We can choose to face it, to push through it, and to find something greater on the other side." The abyss seemed to hesitate, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. For a moment it seemed smaller, less imposing. "I was not always this way," it admitted. "I was once like you, a being of light, of thought, but I was consumed by my own fear. And now I am only fear." Reed's face softened. "You don't have to be just fear," he said gently. "You can be more. You can remember who you were, find a new purpose." The crew watched as the shadows began to shrink, the darkness pulling back slightly. The abyss seemed to consider this new idea, this possibility of change. "Can you help me?" it asked, its voice no longer threatening but almost hopeful. Reed nodded firmly. "We will try," he promised. "But you have to let go of your fear, too. Trust us. Let us help you find your way." The abyss hesitated for a moment longer, then began to draw closer, but this time not in anger or malice. It seemed to reach out, like a child seeking a hand to hold. The humans, still wary, did not step back. They stood firm, offering a chance for something new. For the first time, the abyss felt something it had long forgotten. A faint spark of curiosity, a tiny flicker of hope. And for the first time, it did not feel entirely alone. The tension aboard the Intrepid was thick as the humans continued their delicate conversation with the abyss. Outside, the shadows swirled and shifted, no longer menacing but uncertain. The crew could feel the weight of every word, knowing that the fate of many depended on what happened next. But not everyone was hopeful. On Zeiton, the Galactic Council watched the humans' efforts with growing unease. Many of the alien leaders were not convinced. They feared that the humans were making a mistake, trying to negotiate with a force of pure terror. They believed that the abyss was too dangerous, too unpredictable to trust. Finally, the council decided to act. A message was sent to the Zalthorian fleet, which was stationed nearby. The Zalthorian commander, General Zarth, a warrior known for his ruthlessness, received the order, "Destroy the abyss, no matter the cost." Back on the Intrepid, Captain Marcus Reed stared at the readings on the control panel. He could see the Zalthorian fleet approaching fast. They were not here to help, they were here to attack. "Captain, they're coming in hot," Sarah Kwan reported, her hands moving quickly over the controls. "They're arming their weapons. It looks like they're going to fire on the abyss. And us too, if we get in their way." Reed clenched his jaw. "They don't understand," he muttered. "They're acting out of fear just like the abyss did. We need to buy more time." He turned to Dr. Patel, who was still monitoring the Abyss's responses. "Doctor, can you communicate with it again? Tell it what's happening." Dr. Patel nodded, then spoke calmly. "Abyss, listen to us. There is a fleet approaching. They want to destroy you. They think you're a threat that can't be controlled." The voice of the Abyss returned, filled with both fear and curiosity. "They want to destroy me! But I have done nothing. Not now." Reed jumped in, his voice firm. "They don't trust you yet. But if you fight back, you'll prove them right. You must not attack. You have to trust us now, just as we are trusting you." There was a pause, a deep silence as the Abyss seemed to consider Reed's words. The shadows around the ship trembled, but they did not strike. Meanwhile, the Zalthorian fleet was getting closer. General Zarth's voice boomed over the communication channel. "Human vessel Intrepid, this is your final warning. Move away or be destroyed with the Abyss." Reed quickly opened the communication line. "General Zarth, listen to me. We are making progress. The Abyss is starting to understand. If you attack now, you could ruin everything. Give us more time!" Zarth's face appeared on the screen, his eyes cold. "You gamble with the lives of the galaxy, human. We will not wait." He cut the transmission, and moments later, the Zalthorian ships began to charge their weapons. Reed looked around at his crew. "We have to do something. We can't let this end like this." He turned back to the communication console and spoke directly to the Abyss again. "Abyss, this is your moment. You have to choose not to fight. Show them you are not just a force of fear." The shadows seemed to draw closer to the Intrepid, almost as if they were shielding the ship. The Abyss's voice returned, softer this time, filled with doubt. "I will try," it said, "but if they attack, I cannot promise I won't defend myself." Reed nodded. "We understand. Just hold on." The Zalthorian ships fired their first shots, bright beams of energy slicing through space. But instead of hitting their target, the shots seemed to bend and twist, diverted by the swirling shadows. The Abyss was holding back, only deflecting the attacks and not striking back. The crew of the Intrepid cheered, but they knew this was just the beginning. Reed quickly contacted the Galactic Council. "You see," he said urgently, "the Abyss is not attacking. It's defending itself, but it's not trying to harm anyone. Give us a chance to finish what we started." There was a long silence from the council. Finally, Zira, the Veltari diplomat, spoke softly. "Very well, Captain. You have a small window of time. But know that the fleet will not wait forever." Reed felt a wave of relief. He turned to his crew, determination in his eyes. "Let's make this count," he said. "We're not just fighting for our lives now. We're fighting for the chance to prove that fear doesn't have to rule us." And with that, humanity's gamble continued, hanging by a fragile thread of trust and hope in the darkest of spaces. The Intrepid hovered in the cold darkness of space, caught between the Abyss and the approaching Zalthorian fleet. The crew could feel the tension rising, knowing that a single mistake could end everything. Captain Marcus Reed stood firm, his eyes focused on the dark, shifting shadows outside the ship. The Zalthorian ships were ready to fire again, their weapons charged and aimed at the Abyss. But the Abyss held back, resisting the urge to strike. It was a gamble for both the humans and the ancient entity, a test to see if fear could be replaced by something else. Reed knew time was running out. "Abyss," he called out, his voice strong and steady. "You have to make them believe. Show them you are more than just fear." The voice of the Abyss returned, still filled with uncertainty. "How?" it asked softly. "How do I show them what I do not fully understand myself?" Reed thought quickly. "Let them see your choice," he said. "Show them you are choosing not to fight, that you are willing to change." The Abyss seemed to hesitate, its dark form swirling slowly. Then, almost as if finding new strength, it began to shift. The shadows pulled back from the Intrepid, revealing the ship in the light of distant stars. The Abyss moved away from the human vessel, creating a clear line of sight for the Zalthorian fleet. It stood there, vulnerable and open, as if saying, "I will not harm you." The Zalthorian commander, General Zarth, was watching closely from his warship. His finger hovered over the weapon controls, ready to give the order to fire. But he hesitated, seeing the Abyss's sudden change in behavior. "What is it doing?" he muttered to himself. Zira, the Veltari diplomat, appeared on his screen. "General Zarth," she said cautiously, "it seems to be surrendering. Perhaps we should wait and see what the humans are trying to do." Zarth frowned. He was not used to waiting, especially in the face of danger, but even he could not ignore what was happening. Very well, he grumbled, but only for a moment. Inside the Intrepid, the crew watched with bated breath. "It's working," Sarah Kwan whispered. "It's really holding back." Reed nodded. "We need to do more," he said, turning to Dr. Patel. "Can we broadcast again? Show them more of who we are?" Dr. Patel quickly adjusted the controls and began to transmit another set of images. This time, they showed moments of human compassion and courage. Doctors and nurses working through dangerous pandemics, firefighters running into burning buildings, explorers reaching out to save each other in hostile environments. "These are our stories," Reed said, speaking to both the Abyss and the Zalthorian fleet. "We are not perfect, but we are more than our fears. We choose to help, to heal, to hope, even when we are afraid." The Abyss seemed to draw closer to the images, as if trying to understand them more deeply. Its shadows grew thinner, less dark, and the sense of dread that had once filled the space around it began to fade. "Is this what I can become?" the Abyss asked, its voice no longer cold, but soft, almost hopeful. "Yes," Reed replied with a smile. "You can choose to be more. To be something greater than fear." General Zarth watched closely, still cautious but no longer ready to fire. "Maybe the humans are onto something," he muttered. Then something miraculous happened. The shadows of the Abyss began to change. They started to glow faintly, not with darkness, but with a soft, warm light. It was as if a transformation was beginning, something new emerging from the old. "I want to try?" the Abyss whispered, its voice now filled with a strange mix of fear and excitement. "I want to find a new purpose." The Zalthorian ships powered down their weapons, the threat of attack fading away. Zarth finally lowered his hand, nodding slowly. "We will give you a chance," he said. "But if you betray us?" Reed cut in. "It won't. I believe it won't." The Abyss, now a shimmering entity of light and shadow, hovered calmly, no longer spreading terror but seeking understanding. It had taken the first step toward something new, something beyond the fear that had defined it for so long. The crew of the Intrepid cheered. They had done it. They had faced the Abyss, not with weapons or force, but with courage, compassion, and a belief that even the darkest of beings could change. Reed turned to his crew, smiling with pride. "Today we showed the galaxy that fear doesn't have to win," he said. "We showed that courage is the greatest force of all." As the Intrepid and the Abyss moved away together into the unknown, a new chapter began for both humanity and the strange entity they had just saved. A chapter where courage, not fear, would light the way.